Does God actually exist? Now, the short answer is yes, he does. And in this video, I'm going to prove to you exactly why with the most solid piece of evidence that you're ever going to get. And keep in mind that this is a continuation to my previous video where I explained that to find the right religion, you step outside of religious influence to no religious text. You find out who God is, and then you see which religion aligns. Now, in this video, I'm going to prove to you that God does exist. This is going to be based off of the very popular contingency argument that a lot of people misunderstand. And I'm going to simplify it very, very simple. We're going to use a factor of dependency rather than the factor of causality and whatnot, but I'm going to keep the factor of dependency. So everything around you, it starts like this, very simple. Everything around you that you can think of, imagine, touch, see, everything in the entire universe is dependent on something else. So the existence of that thing is dependent on something else. For a very simple example, you right here who are watching this were dependent on your parents who did things to create you. And so likewise, everything in the universe goes all the way back. We trace it back to the Big Bang. So the next question is, who was the Big Bang dependent on? And then everyone says, oh, it's God. The next question is, well, who is God dependent on? And that's a problem, because God can't be dependent on something, because if he's dependent on something, then that thing is more worthy of being a God than God himself. So for that, it would continue to go back that, okay, what's this dependent on? What's that dependent on? What's that dependent on? And so it has to come to a stop. And the reason why is very simple. Take the example of a person on a bus. If you have a line of people on a bus and the guy says $10 to get on the bus, you say, well, $10, I don't have it. Ask the guy behind me. So now you getting on the bus is dependent on the guy behind you. And so you asked him for $10 and he says, I don't have it. And that keeps going back. He asked the guy behind him and it keeps going all the way back. Now, if there's no stop, meaning if there's no person who has $10 to set this back into motion so that you can get on the bus, you're never going to get on the bus, and nobody else is either. So this entire world would not exist if there was no start or was no origin. And so that origin must be independent, because because we have dependency as our factor. If that thing is dependent on something, on anything in any way, shape, or form, then that thing is more worthy of being a God than this independent being. So we call it God because it must be independent and it must exist. The reason it must exist, once again, is because we wouldn't exist today without that independent being, yeah? And everything else is dependent. That means this thing has to be independent. Otherwise, it wouldn't be the start of every other creation. Now, if it's independent and it's necessary, we can derive a bunch of different attributes from that. And in the next video, I'm going to go through the attributes. And then in the following video, I'm going to go through how to choose the right religion based on this proof that God exists.